Hello students, today's agenda is to check your homework, and today we'll be solving equations by eliminations by changing signs, and you will be able to work on 5.7. Today students will be able to solve systems of linear equations by multiplying one of the equations by -1. But before we go on to that, let me show you an example like we did in the previous lesson. And so these are the steps that we are following. And the previous lesson says, check for opposite coefficients. If we have opposite coefficients, then we go ahead and add the equations. Then we solve for the remaining variable. And finally get one equation and substitute the solution. So we check and notice that x does not have opposite coefficients because they have both +1, and opposite need to have the same number but opposite sign. We go to the y and we notice that we have a +1 and a -1, and those are opposite because we have a positive and a negative and they're able to cancel. So I'm ready to add my equations. When I add my two equations, I get x plus x is 2x, y minus y cancel, equals 5 plus 1 is 6. And that's why it's called elimination method, because one of the variables eliminates. Then we solve for the remaining variable. We divide both sides by 2, and so x is equals to 3. So now we have the x coordinate, which is 3, but now we have to find y. And how do we do that? Sorry about that. We get one of the equations and substitute the solution that we found for x. You can choose any of the two equations. You just need to be careful with the signs, okay? I decided to choose the first one, and so I'm going to put x plus y equals 5. I just chose that one, okay? Not both, but the first one. And I'm going to replace the value that I found for x on x. So it's going to be 3. The rest stays the same, plus y equals 5. I solve for that variable by eliminating. If I'm adding 3, I'm going to subtract 3 to eliminate. And so my y is equals to 2. So now I have my two coordinates, which tell me where my two lines will meet, which is going to be at point 3, 2. So that was yesterday. What about today? It's going to be very simple following these steps. That's why I keep posting them in here. So that we notice how similar they are and how, like, what's the difference. So for this lesson, this is going to be the first one. So I have these two equations, this system of equations, and I say check for opposite coefficients. I look at x and both have +3, so those are not opposite. One has to be positive and one needs to be negative. I check for the other one, for y, and I notice that one has a negative and one has a positive. However, we don't have the same number after the sign. They have to have the same, either -2 and +2, or +8 and -8, but they don't, so I cannot cancel those either. So, but I noticed that these are the same number, so what I can do is multiply. When they have exactly the same number and same sign, I just multiply by a -1. And I multiply every single term on that one equation, only that one equation. So my new equation, I'm going to write it here. It's going to be -1 times 3x is -3x. -1 times -2y is +2y. -1 times 12 is negative 12. So if you notice, the only thing that changed by multiplying that was the signs of every single term on both sides of the equal sign. The second equation, I'm just going to copy it the way it is because now I can check to see if I have opposite coefficients, and now because I multiply by -1, I have opposites in here. Same number, but opposite sign. That makes them opposite. Okay? So I'm going to be able to add now. Add the equations is the next step. And when I add them, one of the variables eliminates, because if I owe 3 boxes and I have 3 boxes, then that's even to 0. And then I have 2y plus 8y, that will be 10y equals, if I add -12 and 72, that makes it +60. Solve for the remaining variable. I divide both sides by 10, and so my y is equals to 6. I already have my y. Notice how this time I have my y, not my x. And so this is what I'm going to replace in one of the 2 equations. It doesn't matter which one. Okay, so let me choose, I'll choose the first one still. I'm going to have 3x minus 2y equals 12. I forget about everything now that I got my equation except my solution that I'm going to substitute into my y. So 3x minus 2, don't forget to write this. Some people want to get rid of the whole term instead of just y. You're just replacing y. And I multiply. So 3x, -2 times 6 is -12 equals 12. Let me put it up a little bit. I cancel by adding. And so 3x is equals to 24. I divide both sides by 3. And my x is equals to 8. Because 24 divided by 3 is 8. So I found my solution. Now you can always check your answers, because 3 times 8 is 24, minus 2 times 6 is 12, and 24 minus 12 is 12. The other one is 3 times 8 is 24, 8 times 6 is 48, and 24 plus 48 is equals to 72. Okay, so you can always plug those into your x and your y, and you could check your answers. Okay, let me do one more, or a couple more. Again, in here we have a positive and a negative, but the coefficients are not the same. We don't have a 2 and a 2. So we go to the x, both are positive. So we are going to have to multiply one of them. And it can be the second one, it doesn't matter. But if you want, you can do that too. And we start multiplying. Again, why are we multiplying by -1? Because they have the same coefficient, which is 1. But we need one negative and one positive. And by multiplying by -1, that makes it -x. Okay? So the new equation is going to be -1 times x is -x, -1 times 2y, -2y, -1 times 4 is -4. You just copy the second equation just as it is, exactly the same way. And so we add by adding, which is the second section. Now we can check that we have opposites. We can add the equations. These cancels because we have one positive and one negative, and the same coefficient. And -2 and -1y is -3y. equals -9. Solve for the remaining variables, divide by -3, so y is equals to +3. We already have our y, which is 3. Now we need to find x. I'm going to choose one of the equations to substitute my solution. And so it will be, let me see, I'll do the second one. And so I'm going to put x minus, and then it says y. You can write the whole equation again or just substitute already. Equals -5. I add 3 to both sides. And x is equals to, if I owe $5 and pay 3, that means that I still owe $2. Okay, so my x is equals to -2. So that's where the two lines, the two equations will meet when I graph them. Okay, again, we don't need to graph them since we know how to find that solution without having to do the graph. We're finding that solution by eliminating one of the variables. That's why it's called elimination. Okay, let's see. Okay, so again, another set of equations. And so, am I ready to add them? Well, let me check for opposites. These have the same number, but not the opposite sign. These have the same sign and very different numbers, so not even close, right? So I'm going to multiply by -1. And I'm going to multiply all of them, all the terms on that one equation. And so my new equation will be -3x, -2y, negative times negative, +4. I just copy the second one exactly as it is. And so I add. Now I can add the equations and solve for the remaining variable. When I add, -3x and +3x cancel. -2y and +3y makes 1y. And I don't need to put the 1 as coefficient because we already assume that it's there even if we don't write it. And I have $4, but I have a debt of $9. So after I pay those $4, I still owe $5. Okay, so that's my y. For my x, I'm going to choose one of the two equations. Let me choose the second one. Whoops, it's not x that I have in here, it's y, so I shouldn't put this in here. So that I don't get you confused. 3x plus 3 times y, but we know that the y's value is -5 equals -9. I multiply, and so 3x +3 times -5 is -15 equals -9. I cancel by adding 15 to both sides, and so 3x is equals to, if I owe $9 but pay 15, that means that I end up with $6. I divide both sides by 3, and so my x is equals to 2. Okay, so that will be the solution for these two equations. I'm going to show you, let me see if I can go out a little bit. And I'm going to show you how to check to make sure that you have the right solutions. And this is for all solving systems of equations. Once you find the solution, you can plug in your x and your y on both equations. And if you have the same number on both sides, then that means that your answer is correct. This you don't need to do if you don't want to, but it would be good to at least practice it with 2 of them. Okay, so 3 times x, 3 times 2, plus 2 times y, meaning 2 times -5, equals -4. Now let's see if that comes up to be true. 3 times 2 is 6. 2 times -5 is -10, equals -4. 6 minus 10 is -4, because that means you have $6, but then they try to take away 10. Since what you're subtracting is bigger, then you end up with a negative, and it's equals to -4, so check. Okay, so it checks for one of the equations. Now let's see if it checks for the other. 3 times x, which is 2 again, same point, plus 3 times y, and the y is -5, equals -9. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times -5 is -15, which is equals to -9. 6 minus 15 is -9 equals -9. Because both are the same number, that means that my answer is right, so check. Okay, so that's just a way to check, but again, it's an extra step that you can take to make sure that you're right, especially on tests. So I think those are good examples for you to be able to do 5.7, and I hope this video helped.